It's been a long time since I made my last bonsai. Literally centuries, I think. Or maybe millennia. I can't remember. In this video, I will provide an update on the Soursop cuttings that I rooted with plasma before getting to bonsai crafting and electroculture. If you live in a cold climate and are new to the bonsai universe, I do not suggest starting your journey with a tropical tree like the Soursop. A bonsai is traditionally grown as an outdoor plant because it's very challenging to keep a bonsai alive indoors. Besides, other plants like a ficus or a succulent plant are easier to start with for an indoor bonsai. Annona trees like the Soursop can be quite finicky, especially in a cold climate in a confined environment. Actually, even in tropical regions, Soursop trees are seldom used for bonsai making. So I suggest you first master the art of growing tropical fruit trees indoors before attempting what follows. Now, without further ado, let's jump right into it. After successfully rooting some Soursop cuttings, I initially transplanted them to these small plastic cups. The first few weeks the roots continued to develop in the new soil, but eventually it seemed that the cuttings stopped growing, and soon they started to look weak and sick. So I decided to have a closer look at the roots. After almost a year, the roots should have filled the small plastic cup, but that was not the case. Soursop trees are known to be difficult to air layer. I believe rooting and transplanting Soursop cuttings is even more challenging. At that point, only 3 cuttings were still alive. 2 of them looked really bad. I had to do something before it was too late, so I transplanted the cuttings to these band pots. Basically, a band pot is a pot that features an open bottom design to promote air pruning. I modified the pot by adding lateral holes to maximize oxygen access for the roots. The 2 weakest cuttings eventually died after the second transplantation, and I soon was left with only 1 cutting still alive. The silver lining was that the surviving cutting was pushing new growth during the winter indoors, and it seemed it had developed a fibrous root system. When spring finally arrived, I wanted to check how fibrous the roots were. The key was to not damage the roots in the process, as Soursop roots can be quite brittle. As you can see, it was not easy to do that with one hand holding the camera. At one point I thought I was going to break the root ball at the base of the cutting, as the heavy roots were soaked with water. I must say I did not expect to see such a massive root system. I was wondering what to do with it when a crazy idea came to me: a Soursop bonsai. With such a thin stem, I was not going to win the first prize at an international bonsai competition, but for some reason the desire to get back into this art came to me by just looking at the cutting. First, I needed to find a pot with the right size. These days my diet is essentially ramen noodles, as just like many Canadians, I am pretty broke. So I have a privileged access to a wide variety of ramen plastic bowls. But the plastic bowls I had were all too big for my liking. A bonsai is all about aesthetics and proportions. I needed something smaller. I eventually decided to go with this small instant wonton soup plastic cup. Just like with the band pots, I modified the wonton soup cup by making a bunch of holes. Then I prepared the pot to anchor the bonsai with an aluminum wire. Aluminum is not only the cheapest material for bonsai training wire. This mineral also has some interesting properties. More on that later. Next, I trimmed the roots of the Soursop cutting for a better fit of the root ball inside the homemade bonsai pot. In case you didn't know, the word bonsai is a Japanese word that literally translates to planted in container. The Japanese bonsai tradition is probably the most well known in Western countries.
你師傅講過，你曾經學過武術，你學過啲乜嘢？
I am proficient in tiger crane style, and I am more than proficient in the exquisite art of the samurai sword.
This tradition is more focused on temperate climate trees. While there are some exploratory practices in the southernmost Japanese islands of Okinawa, other traditions of bonsai crafting dedicated to tropical trees are more established in Southeast Asia.
日本見到開咩玩笑？係啲日本人先蠢去學嘅啫，你仲更加笨，居然夠膽輕視我！
For example, the Vietnamese bonsai tradition is as old, if not older, than the mainline Japanese tradition. Both traditions were inspired from the Chinese practice of penjing, which literally translates to landscape in a pot.
你個漢語好差，我一個字聽唔到，而且好似意。
Interestingly, the Vietnamese words for bonsai translate to island mountain set, and it was precisely this microcosm idea that I had in mind, applied with the concept of if you are too broke to go to the mountain, bring the mountain to you in an instant wonton cup.
睇你嘅脾氣都幾可愛，你知唔知本道嘅功夫同你點比啊？
Well, that was my adaptation of Taoist wisdom. After covering the soil with a layer of rock dust, I thought I needed to further accentuate the mineral character of this set. I picked 3 dark rocks at random around the garden. After washing the rocks, I tried to come up with a balanced composition. Two of the rocks fell in place effortlessly. But I could not fit the third rock nicely anywhere in the composition. Then I remembered that early bonsai traditions replicated mythical mountainous islands, described as the dwelling place of Immortals, with trees bearing fruits that granted eternal youth. The Soursop is a fruit tree that does have many health benefits. Many potential applications are still being studied by modern science. But which immortal will best fit in this island mountain set? What do you think? Anyway, thank you for watching. Do not let the Blessed One be disturbed by cold. Do not let the Blessed One be disturbed by heat. Do not let the Blessed One be disturbed by the touch of flies, mosquitoes, wind, sun, and creeping things. Those were the thoughts of Mukalinda, the Cobra King, as he coils around the Buddha to protect the Blessed One during his meditation, shortly after enlightenment. Then this thought raced through my mind faster than the speed of light. I was gifted a small bronze Buddha statue many years ago. Unfortunately, I quickly recalled where I left it. The small statue was a perfect fit in the composition. I was dumbfounded, kind of mesmerized. As I observed the microcosm that I just manifested, I slowly recalled that the mythical mountainous islands represented a place where the density of immortal energy, or holy energy, was vastly higher than in the human realm. If you watched my previous videos on plasma and electrohydrodynamics, you may have realized yourself that this is a setup with 2 asymmetric electrodes, the thin bonsai wire and the relatively more massive Buddha statue. Strange things can happen with asymmetric electrodes, such as the production of an ionic wind. But of course here no high voltage is applied to the electrodes, so no strange effect was noticeable at the macro scale. But this is also a bimetallic setup. The Buddha is in bronze, while the bonsai wire is in aluminum. This setup is often referred to as an earth battery or a telluric cell, as both electrodes are connected to the wet soil that acts as an electrolyte. A part of me wanted to leave the magic undisturbed. The other part wanted to collapse the wave function, so to remain in a quantum field closer to the human realm. I eventually chose the collapse. First, I set my multimeter to DC volts, and lo and behold, there was indeed a tension between the two electrodes. Not only was there a tension, but the tension was strongest between the head of the snake and the body of the Buddha, almost 1 volt. Had I chosen elements made with other materials, like the traditional copper bonsai wire, instead of aluminum, no voltage would have been produced, or the voltage probably would have been much lower. Next, I set the multimeter to milliamps. No current was detected, so I switched to microamps. There was a current between the head of the snake and the Buddha. At this point, I only have one question left in my mind. Is this setup going to have any meaningful effect on the Soursop bonsai? And if so, will the effect be beneficial or detrimental to the bonsai, given the toxic nature of aluminum? I guess only time will tell. But I already knew this unassuming microcosm had an effect on me.